Hello and welcome back to the Kickstarter Weekly. This week's episode is covering campaigns that are completing their funding between October the 31st and November the 6th. In this week's video, I'll be looking at 2 played games, 3 currently running campaigns, 1 game that I personally backed from last week's video, and I believe 5 new arrivals. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'm going to try to keep this video moving to get through this as quickly as possible today. So let's start with those 2 played games. The first one is Descent: Legends of the Dark. I've been playing this one for a while, and I keep updating you guys on what I think about the game and how the campaign's been going. Now, the last time I talked about this game, I said that I thought the score would settle in around a 7. I didn't expect it to go much lower than that, because we're about 4 games from the end of the campaign. The things that the game's been doing poorly have been consistently poorly, and I thought that I'd reached a point where nothing new was going to happen to make me rate the game any lower. Well, that changed. So we are now playing the game in single scenarios per meetup, because 2 meetups ago, one of the scenarios ran about 8 hours. And my friend Ryan came over last weekend. We were going to play 1 scenario of the 4 remaining. So he arrived around 11. We got the app set up. We kind of picked out our cards. Some of the setup for the characters can take a little amount of time. You have to choose which skill cards you want to bring in. If you've got new upgraded items or weapons and things like that, you might want to change the loadout. There are a lot of things like that in the app that can take a while when you're setting up the game. So it took us about an hour to do that. And then we started playing the campaign around noon. Now, Ryan had to leave at 7. We thought we're going to make that time easily. In fact, we'd planned to play something smaller. I think Wasteland Express Delivery Service or maybe Barren Park. So we got into this campaign. It was progressing the way that these campaigns usually do in Legends of the Dark. But we were okay. You know, some things were vague and unclear. The design about certain elements of the scenario kind of bothered us a little bit, but fine, we were plodding through it. And we got about 4.5 hours in, and we were given what we thought was a final goal, which said, this is what you need to do to complete this scenario. You need to do this one thing over here, and then you need to go over there and ring a bell. And so we thought, great. There were a lot of monsters out on the board at that time. Let's say about maybe 8 monsters. Now, we were already pressed for time, and we were already kind of annoyed at the length that this scenario was taking. So we decided to let the monsters kind of follow us and then kind of go around in a circle to get where we needed to go to do this one last thing to complete the scenario, or so we thought. If we had taken that moment in time to kill those monsters, we probably would have been okay. I think it would have been a cakewalk. We were in a pretty decent position. We just didn't want to take the time to do that, and often in our scenarios, in this game and dungeon crawlers in general, but this game specifically, this is something we've encountered many times before, the enemies don't generally stop spawning. So if you clear a room, you kill all the monsters, you might get a turn or 2, but the monsters are just going to respawn. It's kind of like a gauntlet mode in general. It seems like the monsters just keep respawning because they don't want to give you the ability to just walk around the dungeon and have nothing to deal with, no encounters. So we decided, well, we just need to get over there and ring that bell anyway. Let's not waste time with these monsters. It's going to take a while to kill these guys. They'll probably just respawn. Let's just not do that. So we essentially kited them around in a circle. We made our way through. It got a little tight to get through, but we got through. We rang that bell. Now, as we were on our way over, more monsters spawned. When we rang the bell, more monsters spawned. So now we're looking at a dungeon of 18 monsters. And they told us that when we rang that bell, now you just have to clear the monsters in the room. But there were 18 monsters. Some of our characters had minor wounds. The way the game plays is that if a character's health is ever reduced to 0, they suffer a minor wound. Now, whether that is really a problem or not depends on the character, and it depends on the wound. Sometimes it's just an annoyance. There's really nothing to a minor wound at all. However, with my tank character, I got this tired wound. and which means that you take more fatigue. Every time you, I think, flip a card, which is normally how you get rid of fatigue, every time you flip a card, you have to take a fatigue. So my tank character doesn't have a lot of fatigue slots to begin with. And in general, anytime I want to use an ability with him, I need to take fatigue. I need fatigue slots. So having that minor wound actually really affected this character. And the way that the game system works is if you ever need to take fatigue and you can't, you just take damage. So what happened is my tank character was very hard to use once he had that minor wound. I was still dealing with it, but it meant that I was often not really using any abilities with him, just kind of hacking and slashing. And then sometimes when he'd get attacked, I'd take more damage. You can flip cards over. Most of the cards have the ability to flip them over and use the reverse side, and that's generally how you get rid of fatigue. However, in any character's turn, they have 3 actions, one of which is movement. And if you flip a card, that's an action. So if I'm sitting there and I've got, my player card, a couple different skill cards, a weapon card, and all of these cards are filled with fatigue, it's going to take me 2 or 3 turns just flipping cards and not doing anything to be able to get those slots back so I can use my activities. Now, when I'm tired, every time I flip a card, I'm taking a fatigue on that card. Most of the cards only take 2 or 3 fatigue. So taking 2 or 3 turns to flip all my cards over, not do anything else, is only getting rid of like half of the fatigue. Now, somewhere in the 18 monsters spawning as we were kind of making our way across the dungeon, my character is the tank character, so he tries to protect other characters. And as I said, when he's full of fatigue, he takes damage. So his minor wound became a major wound, which means his health dropped down to 0 a second time. This particular wound, when it became worse, when it became a major wound, became where whenever I'd flip a card, I would have to take a fatigue on that card and another fatigue on another card, which really meant that there was no reason to flip cards at all. It wasn't going to do anything. It wasn't going to gain me any open slots to be able to take fatigue to use abilities because I was just going to have to take 2 more fatigue anytime I flipped a card, which means that my tank character was now pretty useless. All he could do was just do a slash with a weapon. No abilities, he's hitting for a few damage points per attack. And we're fighting 18 monsters simultaneously. And we managed to get them bottlenecked into a certain spot into a room where only a few of them could attack us at a time. One of those monsters was able to teleport out. I sort of backed off with my tank character because he was just taking damage and there was no real way to keep him healed. There isn't a lot of good healing options in this game. You have one character who can heal, but he doesn't heal for a lot, and you can supplement that ability, but it's not much more. There are some things within the environment you can use to heal, but again, it's not a lot. It's more just about other ways that you keep the characters going and heal them, little bits as you go. But I'd already used like a healing potion for that character. He was kind of done. It was just a case at that point of how do we keep this character from dying, the tank, while we kill 18 monsters with the 3 other characters. And we did a really good job. We got it down to like 6 other monsters on the board. But it got to a point with this character where when he would attack, there are some wolves that will attack you back. So normally that might cause you damage, it might cause you fatigue, but if this character, my tank, who was max fatigued, got hit with fatigue, he's going to take more damage. So it became a point later in the game where he couldn't even attack the wolves, because by attacking, he would suffer damage back that he couldn't defend against, and that was whittling him down faster than just him not fighting and only defending when monsters attacked on their attack. There are some abilities I have that could have helped with that, but not when I'm full of fatigue and I can't use any abilities. So essentially what happened is if we'd tried to clear those enemies before we got to the end, I think we would have finished the scenario, would have been, I think, a relative cakewalk at that point. But because we got 18 enemies coming out at the same time, all because we tried to cut the campaign short because Ryan had to leave and we didn't want it to go overly long. Because of that choice, the scenario became unwinnable. And that choice was made in part based on the way that enemies respawn or, kind of repopulate the map, which we've been dealing with for the entire campaign. So this became yet another example where something happened in the game, sort of a designer choice that was different to what had been happening previously, wasn't explained to us, obviously, in the scenario. It's not like if you do this, enemies are going to spawn. And that's fine. I think in general, if this had just happened as a one-off, we would have been fine. It's just that it's come on the heels of so many other problems with this game and the design and the scenarios not being clear about the way that the scenarios are designed. So we made choices. We got too many enemies for us to defeat, and we ended up dying 4 scenarios from the end of our campaign. The way the game works, it doesn't mean the campaign ends. It just means that you lose the scenario, but you're not allowed to replay scenarios. And I don't think Ryan and I have really enjoyed that, playing a scenario for 5.5 hours and then kind of stupidly dying because all of these monsters spawned at once. Yeah, it's partly our responsibility for the choice that we made to kind of kite around them and try to hit that bell. And maybe not realizing that the game didn't say final objective, even though right before it, there'd been all these cutscenes and had said, like, this is what you need to do to complete the scenario. So we probably should have been, more looking at the little note on the screen saying next objective rather than final objective. Although, to be fair, I've never seen it say final objective in the past. I think Ryan has noticed that, but I hadn't. So what this all means is that partly by our choice, partly by questionable designer choice, we had a scenario that I think we could have easily beaten. We tried to end it a little more quickly because it had already been 4 hours at that point, and we ended up losing and having it be just ridiculously impossible for us to win that scenario. I think the fact that we pared down like 2/3 of the enemies at that point, despite the condition that our characters were in after all those enemies respawned, was a noble effort. But it just makes us like the game even less. So we now have 3 scenarios left. Unfortunately, we're going to have to pad it out over 3 different meetups because the scenarios are running so long. And at this point, we are not... I don't want to say that we're not looking forward to finishing. We want to be done with it. There's that. I am a completist, so I want to finish it. I want to see how the story ends. I don't like losing these kinds of games. And if I lose something like this in a video game, I want to go back and be able to replay that scenario. Some dungeon crawlers will allow you to do that. There are, kind of goods that we looted during the game. There's feats for our characters that were upgraded. So it wasn't like the whole 4 or 5 hours was completely a waste or in vain. But when I'm having my friend drive, a couple hours to get here through LA traffic, we're playing one scenario over 5 or 6 hours, and then he has to go home, and we lose because of the way that the scenario was designed, combined with our choice. It's just not fun. And I've said this before, the game says Act 1 on the box. It's this big cube-shaped box. There's no way in hell I will be getting Act 2. I will be selling Act 1, happy to never play it again. And we may actually launch right into playing some Descent Journeys of the Dark, just because we want to play a good Descent game and sort of cleanse the palate. Ryan had said to me a couple scenarios ago, let's play some Euros after this. I want to play something else besides a campaign game. I think because he wasn't enjoying Descent Legends of the Dark. Now it's gotten to the point where he's enjoying it even less, to the point he wants to start the next campaign. He wants to do something else that he will enjoy more than this game. Now, I think for me, the score was at a 7.0, which is a score where if you are enjoying that kind of genre, you should enjoy that game. Like a 7 in the 7s to me is not a great score, but it's a solid score enough that if you like that kind of game, you'll like it. If you don't like that kind of game, you may not want to engage with something that, is being rated a 7. I think you want to go for something higher, an 8 or a 9, right? If you're going to only choose specific experiences, choose the best ones. And 7s are more kind of, okay. So for me, I'm now dropping my Descent score down to a 6, which is super marginal. That's something where it's a 6.0 is my score. So that's something where if you really enjoy this genre, you're going to have qualms with this, but you may still enjoy it, but there's going to be problems. And if you don't love this kind of game, just don't do it for a 6. Hopefully it doesn't drop down even lower into the 5s, but I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, I think it's going to be more of the same for the remaining 3 scenarios. And I think a 6.0 is a bad enough score already, considering all of the other things that we do like about this game. Things I've talked about in the past that make me want to rate this game like a 9. But there are just so many other problems in the game that ding it down from like a 9 now down to a 6. So it's unfortunate. We're looking forward to completing the campaign, being done with it, getting rid of it, and moving on to other better games. And for anyone else out there, I would recommend probably staying away from this game. And it's too bad because there are other things in the game to recommend it. I mean, the gameplay, some of the gameplay elements of the way the characters work, we really like. We like building the map up. And there was a lot of effort made to make this version of Descent very diverse. There's a character with they pronouns. There's a deaf character. There are plenty of female characters. There's a lot of diverse stuff in this box, which would be a really good reason to play it, but I can't recommend it with all of these design hiccups and things that I think were just poorly conceived and poorly communicated in the scenarios themselves. So hopefully there will be more dungeon crawlers out there that are as diverse as this one. I'm about to get Artisans of Splendent Vale, which was designed by Nikki Valens, which isn't really a dungeon crawler, I don't believe. It's more like an exploration game with characters where you're doing things. But I know that that game has a very diverse slate of characters. So I think if you're looking for something like that, that should be a great game for that. The Kickstarter is delivering, I think, next month. It'll probably be in retail soon after that if you want to pick that one up. It may not be enough of a dungeon crawler for people who just really want dungeon crawls. And I will let you know when I find another really good one. I know some games that I'm looking forward to playing in terms of dungeon crawlers are Madara, Chronicles of Drunagor, Age of Darkness, and Oathsworn, Into the Deepwood. But I don't know how kind of representative those games are. I don't think they're that representative. But once I play them, I will let you know. And I will let you know when I find games that kind of have more going on under the hood than just a bunch of dudes hack and slash. I like those kinds of mechanics, but there's no reason that they can't be more diverse and appeal to a much wider swath of gamer. So I think if you're looking for a really good dungeon crawler that has that in it, Descent Legends of the Dark is not that game, and I would say stay away, wait for the next one. Hopefully there's something else in the pipeline, and I'll let you know when I find it. I played 4 more games of The Loop, which is a cooperative game that is very much about hand management and using cards. There are variable characters that you can play in it. There are 4 different scenarios. I have now played all the scenarios with the same 3 characters, the kind of more advanced 3 characters. I'm finding I really like to play with those 3 characters. The other 2 characters, one of them, that character's variability is just a move to anywhere on the board, kind of like a teleport. And then the 5th character is just a very basic character who's not that special. I can't remember what his ability is, but he's the simplest character in the game. So I'm using the 3 more advanced characters. I've completed all of the scenarios. The interesting thing is the most advanced scenario is called Ultra Machina or Ultra Machina. And I was a little wary of this scenario. I thought it would be the most difficult. It's actually the easiest scenario in the box. It makes the game more crunchy. So there's a lot that you have to think about in how you exercise your turns and what you do, which is really cool. I like thinky games. But there is an element in much of the rest of the game where cubes will come out, kind of like a cube tower. And there are clones that can come out as well, clones of the evil Dr. Foe who you're trying to fight. And if you're dropping cubes into a zone with clones on it, you're going to drop more cubes, sometimes many more cubes. So you can very easily lose the game in those scenarios just based on luck, based on literally how the cubes fall and where the clones are and if there's more cubes coming out and how the cubes fall. I don't love games that are just kind of won or lost by the roll of a die or the drop of a cube. It's kind of annoying if you go through all the energy to play a game and all the setup and you're invested and you're playing it and it's just a luck thing that ends the game. A lot of games have that luck factor in it. I think it can make games a little more exciting. So I think that nobody likes to lose to bad luck over and over. If you're playing and your skill is rewarded, great. Sometimes if that skill is affected by bad luck, that's okay. That's okay from time to time. But you don't want to just be beating your head against a bad RNG, random number generator game where it's all just luck of the draw. At that point, who cares? What's the point, right? So that is more of an issue in earlier scenarios of the loop. Once you get into the final scenario of the loop, it takes away a lot of that randomness and makes it much more about the crunch. So I think for me, that's actually the ideal way to play the loop is the final scenario, Ultra Machina. Although all those scenarios, they're kind of different. They have different mechanics that mix things up. So they're fun to play them from time to time. The second one, which is the most probably luck dependent, has these super clones that come out. So, and every time you kill one of them, they spawn more clones. And that is a chaotic mess. That's the one where you can also just lose by luck the easiest, because with all these clones everywhere, you get a lot more cubes. But the mess and the chaos makes it fun. So it is a fun scenario to choose from time to time. I just wouldn't want that to be kind of the main mechanic of the game, and it's not. So I have now beat all 4 scenarios. I am now going through and playing them on level 2. I think I beat the first scenario on difficulty 2, and there are 3 different difficulty levels. So I plan on playing them all, and when I get finished with them, and I've beat them all on the highest difficulty, I will probably consider getting the expansion, which is recently out. Has a couple new characters, a couple new scenarios. I don't know what I'll do with the loop after that, because I do enjoy playing it. I think it's a little bit difficult to teach because there's a lot going on. I think heavier gamers could easily pick it up, but I don't know if they'd love it. I don't know if it's their style of game. I think lighter gamers are going to like the game a lot, but it may need a little bit more teach with lighter gamers. So I just think for me with my game groups, it's a game that I won't get to the table much except for solo. And I don't know how long I'm going to keep it solo once I've kind of beat everything on the highest difficulty. I just have a lot of games and I'd like to get to other things. So I'll keep it for a while after I beat everything and then we'll just see. But I really do like it. I think it's one of the best lighter co-ops out there. I would probably recommend people selling off your Forbidden series, getting Horrified, and the Loop. Those are, in my opinion, the kind of the 2 better lighter co-ops out there. And as I mentioned before, the Loop is very much about hand management. There is some kind of area movement, area control in terms of how you're removing red cubes from the board and clones from the board, because if you're not keeping up with that, those will be the items that can make you lose to luck. I mean, you can lose to luck anyway when the cubes come out, but if you already have cubes and a lot of clones out, that will increase the ease for you to lose by a bad cube drop. So those are the main things that you're focused on in addition to the card play. You're trying to fulfill goals around the board, and as you do, you get more goals, and if you complete 4, I believe they're called missions, then you win the game. In the second, third, and fourth scenarios, there are additional mechanics that throw different things in. And that 4th scenario, the one I like the most, actually removes some of those mechanics and gives you new stuff, but the new stuff is not prone to luck. It's just there to give you a crunchier puzzle to deal with, which I really like. So to sum up, this week we've got Descent, Legends of the Dark coming in with a 6.0 and the Loop holding strong with an 8.5. And from there, we're going to talk about the 3 campaigns completing their funding this week. Campaigns I think you might want to take a second look at if you know about them, or if you haven't heard about them, you might want to go and check them out. Just remember that whenever I talk about these campaigns, I profile them in my videos. They are listed down below in the descriptions. There is a link to their campaign. So if there's something that I'm talking about that you're liking, you can just go down there, click on the link. It'll take you right to the campaign. You can look at it further, back it if you like. I also have timestamps, bookmarks in my videos, kind of down here along the bottom, so you can skip to whatever portion you like if there's a certain game, or you can concentrate more on the played games that I'm talking about, or the games that I've acquired into my collection, which will be the games that I'll be looking at in the future to do teach and review videos for, or to stream live on Twitch. Maybe they're games that you want to see played before you go out and buy them. Later this year, I'll be launching a Patreon, and that will be a good way for people to be able to participate in polls that will then determine the games that I'm doing teach and review videos for and the games that I'm streaming on Twitch. All right, let's get started on those 3 campaigns. The first campaign is for ArchRavels Magic Socks. This one is over on Backerkit. They had a minimum required funding goal of $23,000. They're currently at $115,000, which is about 5 times that minimum required funding goal. Now, ArchRavels Magic Socks is going to complete its funding on Monday, October the 31st. This is a game for 2 to 6 players that plays in about 30 to 45 minutes. Complexity on the game is light, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium-high. Now, ArchRavels is not a game that's rewriting history. It's not really doing anything new. It is just a very cute, very attractive pattern building game and set collection game. So you're going to be doing knitting, and you're trying to complete various patterns to fulfill certain goals. And the components are very colorful. There are even some upgraded 3D yarn tokens. So if you really like the game, if you're going to be playing it a lot, the 3D yarn tokens are pretty cool and an upgrade from the cardboard tokens you'd otherwise be using. The new expansion is designed by Adam McCrimmon. He worked on ArchRavels, the original game, Borderlands, Tiny Tina's Robot Tea Party, and Robot Lab, the card game. The artist is Rochelle Stetter, who worked on the original ArchRavels, and the game is being published by XYZ Game Labs. They published the original ArchRavels, as well as Inoka and Robot Lab, the card game. There are a lot of pledge levels for this campaign over on Backerkit because they've kind of broken everything down into all these individual pledge levels. So before we get into those, let me first tell you that there are 2 new mini expansions. One is called Award Season, which will give you new ways to score kind of awards, goals during the game. It'll be another way you can score points while you're playing. That expansion, it's a mini expansion, also comes with some solo stuff. And then there's one called Rivals, which makes the game very more antagonistic between people. It gives you incentives to do antagonistic things to each other. So those are the 2 little mini expansions. Then there are 3 new theme packs. And the 3 new theme packs just have a lot more stuff that you can put into the game to add more variability to it. Just new components, but they're all kind of around different themes. So you've got Cuddles, Cryptids, and Dinos. So there are 2 new mini expansions, 3 new theme packs, and then this new bigger expansion called Magic Socks, which adds Magic Socks into the game. And as you're kind of completing things and getting various socks, they will give you one-off powers and abilities that you can use. One of them being like one of the Magic Socks is a wild, so you'll be able to use that to help you complete something else. But a lot of the other ones have various powers that you can trigger. So that's kind of what we're looking at content-wise, and all of those things expand on a game that is just a very simple, light, pattern building and set collection game. So now that you know the basics about the different theme packs and the mini expansions, let's talk about the various packages that are available to back. For $10, you can pledge the mini expansion Mix and Match, which allows you to get either of the 2 new mini expansions, Award Season or Rivals, but you can add on the other one to that as well. So if you add both, it's going to be $20. For $15, there's a similar theme pack Mix and Match. You'll be getting one of the 3 theme packs, but you can also add on the other 2, which would bring your package up to $45 if you got all 3. And again, those theme packs are Cuddles, Cryptids, and Dinos. For $25, you can pledge ArchRavels Magic Socks. That's just the new Magic Socks expansion. Now, the way that they've structured this makes me think that there are certain pledges that you can't add things onto. So they have another $25 pledge. It's called Build a Bundle. That comes with the new Magic Socks expansion, but then it allows you to add on any or all of the new mini expansions or the theme packs. So I think from what I'm reading that if you want to back more things than just Magic Socks, that's the pledge you want if you're adding on some combination of new stuff. So I think if you just pledge the $25 pledge for ArchRavels Magic Socks, that's all you're getting. If you want to add on more stuff, do the Build a Bundle. For $40, you can pledge the original ArchRavels base game. For $45, you can also pledge just the expansions. So that's going to come with the new big Magic Socks expansion and the little 2 mini expansions, Award Season and Rivals. For $45, you can pledge just the theme packs. You'll get all 3 theme packs for that. You can also get that by pledging the very first one and then adding on the other 2 packs. So either way, you're doing the same thing. You're getting all 3 theme packs. For $90, you can pledge all the new stuff. That means you'll be getting the Magic Socks expansion, the big one, the 2 new mini expansions, and the 3 new theme packs. If you pledge $130, all the new stuff plus the base game, that's exactly what you're getting. All the new stuff we just mentioned, plus the base game. For $130, you can pledge the ArchRavels Deluxe Upgrade. Now, that is all the new stuff, but not the base game. And then you're going to add on 2 wooden bowls and these 3D yarn tokens. For $165, you can get the ArchRavels Full Upgrade. Again, there's no base game with this one, so it's all the new stuff. Then, instead of getting 2 wooden bowls, you're going to get 4 wooden bowls. You'll get the 3D yarn tokens, and you'll get a Yarn Bazaar playmat, like a neoprene playmat. Finally, for $200, everything ArchRavels, it's the previous pledge plus the base game. So you're basically just getting everything, including the 3D tokens, 6 wooden bowls, the Yarn Bazaar playmat, all of the new stuff, and the base game, everything. Now, in the continental US, shipping is being estimated at $13. That's for any pledge. So if they stay true to that, no matter what pledge you get, $13 in shipping. And they're not giving a specific month for their delivery. They're just saying that they plan to deliver ArchRavels Magic Socks in summer of 2023. Next, we're going to Warcrow Adventures. This one's over on Kickstarter. They had a minimum required funding goal of $150,000. They're currently at about $333,000, which is over 2 times their minimum required funding goal. This one's going to finish up its campaign on Tuesday, November the 1st. It's a game for 2 to 4 players. Plays in about 60 to 90 minutes. Complexity on the game is medium light, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at high. Now, this game is a fantasy-themed, narrative-driven, app-required dungeon crawler. Think Mansions of Madness in terms of the way the app is used, or Descent Legends of the Dark, which I would recommend you not play. But think those 2 games in terms of how the app kind of determines where tokens go and what you're doing on the map. So it is a dungeon crawler that requires an app to play. It's co-designed by Alberto Abal, who worked on Aristaya and Infinity Defiance. Jesus Fuster, who also worked on both of those projects. Laura Castro Royo, and Marcus Bello Soto, who worked on Infinity Defiance. The artists have not been credited for the game, so I can't pass those names along to you. And the game is being published by Corvus Belli. They've previously published Aristaya, Infinity N3 Core Book, and Infinity Operation Ice Storm. One quick thing to note, this game is also being made with the idea that the Warcrow Adventures RPG is on the way. This is a miniatures heavy dungeon crawler, and they're planning on using a lot of the same miniatures in the role-playing game, or having basically the ability to use them in the role-playing game. So they're trying to kind of do 2 things at once here: sell this dungeon crawler, but then also get these miniatures made so that people can use them with the role-playing game in the future if they choose to. Just something to be aware of. There are only 3 pledges. For $120, you can pledge the core box. For $180, you can pledge the Platinum Pledge. That's just going to take that core box pledge and add 1 expansion to it. It's called Death Claws of the Dream. It adds 2 more heroes, a bunch of enemy miniatures. I believe they're about 10, but there's a bunch of repeats in them. So there might be 3 of one kind, 2 of another, 3 of another. But 2 new heroes, about 10 new enemy miniatures, and some new tiles, tokens, and cards. Now, it's not clear if there's a new campaign in that box. In fact, I would venture a guess and say no, that you're just getting more characters that you can use. But I'm not 100% sure. I was looking through, the Kickstarter page trying to see if there's a new campaign in that expansion. It doesn't say anywhere if there is or not. So I'm just going to opt on the safe side and say there's not. It's just more stuff, including 2 more playable characters. The final pledge is $325. It's the all-in pledge. It includes the core, the expansion I just mentioned, and then a bunch of other things. There's a scenery pack. That comes with 4 chests, 4 doors, 4 magic doors, 2 altars, and 2 tables. There are two smaller expansions. One's called They Come From the Fog. The other one's called The Underground Rascals. The Fog expansion has 9 new enemy miniatures with enemy cards, and The Underground Rascals has 7 new enemy miniatures with enemy cards. And not all of them are unique, so there are some repeated minis between them. At that pledge level, you'll also be getting a neoprene game mat, frost dice. So the dice in the regular game are just kind of solid colored dice. These are more translucent. They're colored, but they're also translucent. And you'll also be getting some sleeves. Now, if you want some, but not all of those things, you can also purchase them as add-ons. Go with a lower level pledge and then add on what you'd like. For $30, you can add on the They Came From the Fog expansion. Also for $30, you can add on the Underground Rascals expansion. $20 will get you the Scenery Pack. $30 will get you the Game Mat. For $10, you can add on Frost Dice. You'll get 18 Frost Dice for that price. For $15, you can add on a dice tray. For $20, you can add on card sleeves. Should be enough for all the cards in the game. And then finally, and this is not in any of the pledges that we talked about, for $40, you can get the Full Metal Collector's Pack. Now, this comes with metal miniatures. There's 6 of them. I looked all around the Kickstarter page. I don't believe that these are repeats of any of the other miniatures in the game. So you're not getting sort of upgraded to metal miniatures, you're getting 6 new characters. So the only way that you can get those metal miniatures is as an add-on. Now in the continental US, they've estimated shipping at $40 and $46. But that's for the first 2 pledges, the core box and the platinum pledge. They have not given an estimated shipping price for the all-in pledge. And they've also said that if you get additional items as add-ons, that will increase the shipping price. So we do not have an estimate for the highest all-in pledge, nor do we have estimates for things like the $40 add-on Full Metal Collector's Pack. Finally, Corvus Belli is planning on delivering Warcrow Adventures in February of 2024. So not next year, early in the year, not 4 months from now, but February 2024. For our final campaign of the week, we're going to Roll to the Top, Pollen, and Big Top. This is also on Kickstarter. This project had a minimum required funding goal of $20,000. They're currently at $105,000, which is a little over 5 times the minimum required funding goal. This triptych of games is going to complete its funding on Thursday, November the 3rd. Player counts and times vary by games. We're talking about 3 different games in this campaign, so I'm going to give them each to you. Roll to the Top Journeys is a game for 1 to 6 players that plays in about 20 minutes. Pollen is a game for 2 to 4 players that plays in about 30 to 45 minutes. And Big Top is a game for 3 to 4 players that plays in about 40 minutes. Now, all games have a light complexity, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium-high. Let's talk about the 3 games a little bit. And it's very curious because the naming is odd for these games. So there's already a game called Roll to the Top. This new version is called Roll to the Top Journeys. It actually has the participation of the original Roll to the Top designer. But part of what makes this version different is that it can be played solo. So it changes the player count. It's also got new art. But essentially, it is a roll and write game where you're going around the world to different locations. And whenever you go to a location, you'll get a sheet with that location on it. And then for that game, you'll be engaged with that location, literally trying to climb to the top of that location. So this game is really all about the locations. We'll talk a little bit later. There is a sort of a mini expansion that gives you 6 new locations. So if you want to increase the variability of that game, you may want to get the little add-on with the extra locations. Pollen is a redesign of a Reiner Knizia game. There's already a game called Pollen. This is not a redesign of Pollen, even though it's called Pollen. It is a redesign of a previous Knizia game called Samurai the Card Game. And this game is all about tile placement. Essentially, what you're going to be doing is placing tiles out in an effort to attract pollinators, bees, into your garden. So you'll be battling other players to try to attract the bees. Nicolas Cage is going to be scared of playing this game with you. The third game, it's called Big Top. There is also another game, like 5 or 10 years old, called Big Top. This is also not a redesign of Big Top. This is a redesign of a game called Ouroboros, which is a play on words of the Ouroboros, which is the snake that eats its own tail. And I think conceptually, the reason for that is it's a bidding game. But when you're bidding, if you sort of win the bid on certain things, in order to be able to score that prize, you're going to have to bid much higher on something in the future. So it's creating the set of circumstances where the more you bid on things and win things, the more you are obligated to bid higher on other things later in the game to be able to score those first things. You're eating your own tail. But they've done away with the Ouroboros comparison. They're just calling it Big Top. So thematically, it's themed more around circus, carnival sideshows, and just trying to win that prize. Which, if you've been to carnivals and you're trying to kind of win things, oftentimes it's hard, right? You're kind of chasing your good money with bad money, trying to get enough tickets to like win that prize. So I think that's how the theme kind of shifts from that Ouroboros example to a carnival theme. Roll to the Top Journeys is co-designed by Peter Justra, who's worked on Beastie Borders, Exhibition 20th Century, and the original Roll to the Top, which had an exclamation point on the end. The new version does not. And Corné van Moorsel, who's worked on Factory Fun, Habitats, and Nova Luna. The art on this new edition is by Horia Tundrea. Now Pollen, redesigning from his game Samurai the Card Game, is designed by Reiner Knizia. He's probably best known for Modern Art, My City, The Quest for El Dorado, Ra, and Tigris and Euphrates. And the art on the new version is by Beth Sobel. If you know her work, she does amazing nature-themed art, so she's going to be so good, such a good choice for Pollen. She's worked on Calico, Cascadia, Viticulture Essential Edition, and Wingspan. Big Top, working from his previous design, Ouroboros, is designed by Taiki Shinzawa, and he's best known for American Bookshop, Ghosts of Christmas, and Maskmen. And the art on the new version of Big Top is by Mihailo Dmitrievsky, probably best known to audiences by the moniker The Miko, and he's best known for Architects of the West Kingdom, Imperium Classics, Paladins of the West Kingdom, Raiders of the North Sea, and Viscounts of the West Kingdom. Now, all three of these games are being published by BoardGameTables.com. They're probably best known for Corné van Moorsel's game Habitats, as well as On Tour and QE. So for $19, you can pledge Big Top. That is the bidding game. For $39, you can pledge Roll to the Top Journeys. Also for $39, you can pledge Pollen. For $89, you can pledge all three games. And then for $119, which is a $30 increase from all three games, you're going to get all three games plus expansions and upgrades. So what that means is, for Roll to the Top, there's an expansion. It's a 6-card location expansion. So you'll have 6 more cards to be choosing from when you're playing that game. And if you're playing at the high player count, with 6 people, that'll just give you more choices. Everyone will have more locations to choose from rather than being, stuck with kind of the base locations. Now for the other 2 games, they're upgrades. So they're not expansions, they're upgrades. For Pollen, you're going to have little cardboard tokens that you're placing on flowers and things. If you get the upgrade, you're going to have these little glass domes. For Big Top, it's a bidding game, right? So the upgrade is going to be metal coins. Now for $169, that is the biggest pledge. You can get all 3 games, plus expansions and upgrades, and a board game bag. So it's going to give you everything from the previous pledge, plus a board game bag. If you want some but not all of those expansions or upgrades, you can do those as add-ons. For $19, you can add on Roll to the Top Adventures. That is the 6 new locations. For $12, you can add on the 45 glass domes that are an upgrade for Pollen. And also for $12, you can add on the 78 metal coins that are an upgrade for Big Top. Now, you can bundle all 3 together. It's $30 if you get all 3 of those as add-ons, and that is the exact same price that you would get if you did the kind of all the 3 games and then upgraded your pledge to get all 3 games with their expansions and upgrades. It's a $30 jump. So it's the same price whether you get it as a bundle in the add-on or whether you get it as a bundle within the pledge for that pledge price that includes the 3 games. Shipping is super cheap in the continental US, so it's $4 no matter what you pledge. And this is a hard and fast rate, so this is not gonna waver. I was a little less sure about the estimated shipping on ArchRavels, but for this one it's very specific. It is $4 in the continental US no matter your pledge price. So if you get that huge $169 pledge that includes all 3 games, the expansion, the 2 upgrade packs, and a board game bag, you're still only paying $4 in shipping. Finally, BoardGameTables.com is planning on delivering these new games in May of 2023. So that wraps our 3 campaigns for the week. I do want to reveal the 1 game that I personally pledged from last week's video. And that is Harrow County, the game of Gothic conflict. Now, this is from the same team that did Mind Management. I did not pledge that game the first time around. I did pick it up later when they did a campaign for the secret missions. The reason I didn't pledge that one the first time around is I'm just not a huge player of hidden movement and deduction games. You know, things like Fury of Dracula or Whitehall Mystery. I played them. I just don't love them. But I took a closer look at Mind Management once that game got really popular, and I thought that might be the kind of hidden movement and deduction game for me. I liked the way that they tweaked the formula in that game. So I did go ahead and back it when they did that Secret Missions campaign. That very much locked me in with Jay Cormier. I do have some of his other games. I have Belfort. I have In the Hall of the Mountain King. I like his designs in general. So I was very much on board for his next game. This also features some hidden movement and deduction, but there's a lot of other things happening in Harrow County. There are 3 different sort of factions that you can play. I believe if you're playing you against one other player, you're going to choose one of these 2 kind of main sides, and they have different mechanics, kind of like in Root, and to a lesser degree in Merchant's Cove. So the mechanics that you're going to be playing with are different depending on which character you're choosing. And then you can either throw a 3rd character into your game, kind of like another adversary for you both to be dealing with, or if you have a 3rd player, you can have them play that 3rd character. There's also a kind of cool cube tower in the game that actually works with the box. So you're going to be putting cubes in this little hole in the side of the box, and the cubes will actually drop out of this tree, this dark, twisted, Gothic looking tree that's on the front cover of the box. It'll actually work as a cube tower, and the cubes will come out through that. There's a lot of other things that I like in the game in terms of the various mechanics and how they work from character to character, but I like Jay Cormier, and so I was in for his new game and his second now game being produced through Off the Page Games. So it's something that I really look forward to sharing with you all, hopefully playing on Twitch. By the time this game delivers, that Twitch channel should be up and running, and we can feature the game on the Twitch channel for you all. Now I have 5 new acquisitions this period. The first of them is for Calico, which is a very light, kind of pattern matching tile placement game. It has to do with fabric that you're going to be putting around, and then cats that you want to sleep on the fabric. It's something that I thought my wife Kristen would really like, and I backed Verdant, which I'll be talking about at the end of this section. And when I did that, there was the option to add on other games from the publisher. And there were several games that I'd not backed originally when they had their Kickstarter campaigns because they were just a little light for my tastes, but I've heard good things about them. They've kind of already passed the public barometer. So these games have a good reputation. I thought they would be games that Kristen would really like, and so I added them on. The first one was Calico. The second one was Cascadia. Cascadia is designed by Randy Flynn. I don't remember too much about it, but I know it is another kind of medium light tile placement game. It's got a nature theme to it, and it's another game I thought would really appeal to Kristen. So these are both games I hopefully will get played soon, and I can report back to you all what we thought. But in general, the reviews on these games are pretty good. I think most reviewers are, putting them in the 7s or 8s. Like, they're solid games, they're getting solid scores, and people who like those kinds of games seem to really like them. And they're pretty, they look nice on the table. I also received Everdell, Newleaf, Mistwood, and the Complete Collection. I love Everdell. It's been a while since we've played it, though. I actually haven't played maybe any of the previous expansions. But my Everdell collection is growing because I have all the things. So I think it's time for me, now that I have this huge box, to punch everything, get it all put in the new collector's box, and then Kristen and I can do several plays of it, kind of working our way through the base game, which we've both played several times. We really like the base game, and moving on to all of the prior and new expansions. So we still need to play Pearlbrook. There's two other ones I'm just not remembering off the top of my head. One that has meeples you can ride, and the two new ones, Newleaf and Mistwood, which both add in new stuff. So maybe something to do in the future as I get the new studio space going upstairs will be to do a report on what I think of, all of the different expansions, which ones I like to play together, and kind of what my combination is going to be in the future once we play through everything, once we determine this, but what our ideal setup for Everdell will be. I imagine we'll probably want to play with maybe 2 or 3 expansions. I assume putting all of them in will be way too much game to deal with at one time, and some of the expansions may not play that well with each other. But I think a good question to answer eventually will be, when we do sit down, once we have experience with everything, which are the expansions we're going to want to be playing with most of the time. I also got Resurgence, which is the new Stan Kordonski game. I say new Stan Kordonski game, even though I just received Endless Winter Paleo-Americans like last week. And that one I'm really excited to play. A little less excited to play Resurgence, but still excited to play it. And I need to do a deeper dive and just take a closer look at Resurgence. I have a really good idea of what Endless Winter is all about and kind of how it works. Resurgence is a little bit more vague right now in my mind. I believe, though, it is kind of a post-apocalyptic landscape. It's kind of a survival thing, and it's a competitive game. You're playing against each other. It may be a little more take that, but I need to look more into that. Hopefully I'll have more information. I can get that one played soon as well. That game was published through Stan Kordonski's new company that he just launched, and I'm liking his games. Like, every time he does a new game, it's better than the one before. So I'm hoping that with him launching a new publishing company, there will be a lot more really good games coming from him. And hopefully his role as a publisher won't cut into or eclipse his ability to design new stuff. Hopefully he will be delegating a lot of roles at the publisher, but this way at least he'll be able to publish his games. No one can say no or reject his game. He'll just be able to publish anything he wants, whether it's his or someone else's. I don't know if he has plans or not yet to publish other designers' games, but I imagine that's a pretty cool space to be in, where you know that anything that you develop that you want to get published will get published, assuming crowdfunding agrees with you and wants the game to exist. But there's not a publisher saying no to you. The final game that arrived was Verdant. That's the game that came with Calico and Cascadia. That is another nature-themed tile placement game, I believe. This one is just, so much time has gone by that I've kind of forgotten what it's all about, other than it's nature-themed, and it's by this kind of winning group that previously did Calico and Cascadia. So I think all 3 of those games are probably on the short list to get played with Kristen, although she and I have some other games that have come in recently, in previous weeks, that we'd really like to play as well, including Flamecraft, which she's really excited to play with those cool, cute dragons. And even though the Dice Tower gave it a bad review, we got the Legacy of Isla Nublar, the Jurassic World Legacy game that came in several weeks ago. I'd really like to play that. Hopefully I won't think it's as bad as the Dice Tower crew did, but we'll have our own experience with it. And if we don't like it, you'll hear about it. And I'll be another voice out there saying, don't get it. But we'll see. Thanks very much for spending some time with me. I hope I earned your attention with my talk of Descent Legends of the Dark and The Loop, and hopefully the 3 campaigns that we talked about today either made you realize there's something out there that you may like, or made you just kind of reconsider one of those games one last time before you either backed it or didn't. Next week is going to be a big video. I think when I was talking about this video, I said I had like 7 games in the pipeline that I was considering including. And when I did deep dives and looked at the 7 campaigns, a lot of them did not make the cut. One of them was actually canceled, and that is going to be funding later. It's been relaunched. So we may or may not be looking at that campaign in the future, but there were 4 campaigns that I cut from this week's video. It made it for a shorter video. Next week, I'm looking at 8 different games, and 7 of them I know I'm going to be including. So there's 7 really solid games I want to include. That's going to include 20 Strong, the new game from Chip Theory Games, which is interesting. It's a card game, and it's got different decks based on different other of their games, different IP. It's something that can change over time. It's just a solo game for now, but it is a smaller game, smaller than what Chip Theory Games usually does. Something that they're trying to produce on a smaller scale that has room for growth, room for improvement, room for more and more decks if it's hugely successful. I'm also going to be looking at Black Mold, which is a very cool little card game from John Dos Campos. Cthulhu Death May Die Season 3, the new season of Cthulhu Death May Die from CMON. Now, unfortunately, they're not including a lot of the old stuff in this campaign. You can't get all the previous seasons. However, those seasons are in stock at Asmodee, at CMON. So you can buy those previous seasons right now through them. You can't get everything. You can't get all of the add-ons and stretch goals, but you can get both of the 2 base games and a couple of the expansions from those campaigns. So at least you can get some of the things, but you have to do it through CMON's website. Now, that may change by the time we get to next week, so I don't know how much of that stuff will be added on, but right now it is just new stuff, Season 3. I'll also be looking at Destinies Witchwood, the new expansion for Destinies, which also comes with a big kind of storage box that you can put all of the expansions into. Life of the Amazonia, that is the new game from Bad Comet, who did Wild Serengeti, which is another game that I backed and own and want to get to the table soon. It looks really cool to me. It's got really neat animal meeples, and Life of the Amazonia does as well. We'll also be looking at Mosaic expansion, Wars and Disasters. Mosaic just delivered recently. That's a new game from Glenn Drover, who did... Well, what didn't he do? He's done Railways of the World, and more recently he's done games like Raccoon Tycoon and Lizard Wizard, but this is sort of a big civilization game that he did with miniatures. And I need to get the game. I need to get the base game played, but I'm very much looking at the new expansion. It's also, I think, your last chance to get the kind of bigger miniature version of the game. So they're not going to go with that to retail. So if you didn't get Mosaic the first time around and you want kind of the miniature version of the game, you might want to consider backing it through this new expansion campaign. I'll also be looking at Pampero, which is a game by Julio Pombo, who worked with Vital Lacerda a little bit, has worked on some of his solo modes, and co-designed Mercado de Lisboa. I did not love Mercado de Lisboa. I thought it was a too light version of Lisboa that was kind of prone to just the luck of tile draw. However, his new game here, Pampero, that he's doing by himself, is much bigger. It's a much crunchier Euro, and it looks to have a lot in common with some of the meatier Vital Lacerda games. So that's a game that I'm excited about. We'll be talking about that next week. And finally, Race to the Raft, which is the new game from Frank West, who did Isle of Cats. So it's kind of thematically related. It's also a cat game. You can get little miniatures that you can use in Race to the Raft, and you can get miniatures to upgrade your Isle of Cats version if you want to do that. But I love Isle of Cats. I think it's maybe my favorite tile placement game. So I need to do a deep dive into Race to the Raft and see if that's something that I also want to back. I have a feeling next week's going to be tough for me. I have a feeling that I may be backing a lot of games in next week's video. You'll have to tune in 2 weeks from now to find out which of those games that I backed. And in next week's video, I'll share which, if any, of the 3 games that we talked about today that I backed. However, remember from last week's video, I did back 1 game, and that was Harrow County. There's only 1 game that I may or may not be covering next week that I have on my list that I'm still trying to decide, and that's Escape from New York. The publisher that's putting out that game, I did back a game previously from them that I really like called Last Aurora. But from what I've seen so far from Escape from New York, I'm not fully in. I'm not loving it. So don't be surprised if I don't cover that game next week. But that is the only one that's on the fence. The other 7 games that I mentioned, they'll all be in the video next week. So have a great week. Play lots of great games. I'm going to try to get in some games as well. And then next week I'll have another video up and we'll be going over all of those campaigns. So again, thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you very soon. Take care.